Greetings once again, Dr. Joseph Martin here. Pression or pressure, universal law of creation, and this will be part one of two. Pression is the French word for the English word pressure. What we're trying to understand here are the universal laws, and this is one of them that I'm going to present to you now, that govern everything in society, from astronomy to anthropology to anatomy, from physics to physiology to psychokinetics, from biology to botany and everything, and microbiology and everything in between. There are certain universal laws. These are a little different ones than the ones you'd have learned in high school. These are not the laws of thermodynamics. These are different laws, but they do come from cosmology and from physics, and they are replete or continuous in all the sciences of everything we can ever discover. So, pression is a French word. In the 14th century, the etymology of this word talked about suffering and anguish and something that was bearing down on someone to make them feel mentally oppressed and or emotionally oppressed. And that's interesting in the 14th century because we're just coming into the Renaissance period where consciousness is coming back after about 1,000 years of dark ages since the fall of Rome. So the old French word means torture actually as well, not just oppression, but torture, as if something's being done to one against their will in a sense, but also pushing them to the extremes. It actually comes from the Latin word pressura, which means the action of pressing, which comes from the Latin premere, or to press. Premere is an interesting one. If we were to break that down, we'd have prem, which is the Sanskrit word for pure joy, and ere, which is the Latin word to be. So in order to be pure joy, you're going to have to feel some pressure in your life. And that's the whole point of what I'm going to be getting at here, is what pressure does to us and how we can use it constructively and creatively instead of letting us completely dissolve into nothingness. Although with the ego, that might be a good thing. In the 1620s, pression or pressure started to have a connotation of moral or mental coercion, as if society now was starting to think that you could coerce other people and that using this pressure could be done for moral purposes, as in the Catholic Church pressuring other people of other cultures or their own culture, pressuring them to give them money to so that all their sins could be forgiven through the auspices of the church, the priest, or the pope. But there's other ways that politicians and military people use pressure to get what they wanted. In the 1650s, when science was starting to come alive again after many tens of thousands of years in the Western world at least, we used the notion of pressure in many ways in the beginnings of science in the scientific revolutions in the last 300 or 400 years. So pressure means atmospheric pressure, as in there's a high pressure day when it's sunny like today, a low pressure day when the atmospheric pressure is low. We have vapor pressure, we have a blood pressure, and within the blood pressure we break it down into diastolic pressure and systolic pressure. We have arterial pressure, we have venous pressure in the body. We have all kinds of pressure. We have osmotic pressure. We have surfactant pressure on the surface of a liquid to show what the power of the pressure between the liquid and the gaseous form is, or between the liquid and the air itself. We have vapor pressure. We have so many kinds of pressure, skin pressure. And as it evolved, we have, of course, in the Eastern medical traditions, such as Ayurveda, we have pressure points, and they're called marma points. And these are points in the physical body. They're invisible points, but they're energy points in which actually pressure is used to allow energy to flow in and to flow out. And also, of course, in traditional Chinese medicine and Tibetan medicine, we use pressure points. And sometimes these same pressure points are used as acupuncture points. not just to press down with the fingers. And in a massage and reflexology, pressure points, all again. Everything is around pressure. And we have pressure treated wood. We have applying pressure to stop bleeding. And we have pressure cookers to cook our food faster. In alchemy, we have the pressure vessel. And in the mystical traditions like Kabbalah and Sufism, we have the pressure vessel. The vessel is a closed container, or retort, as we use the word from alchemy and chemistry, to connote the fact that you need contained pressure and sustained increasing pressure in order to have transformation. And that's the whole point of this universal law of pressure. Without pressure, there can be and will be no transformation. It seems that the universe is created and structured and functions on pressure. So in the beginning, out of the nothing, there was an impulse to create like an internal compression, if you like, to allow an external expansion. And this is the other law that I'll get to another time. The corresponding complement to pressure is expansion. But let's just stay with pressure now. We know that the pressure or the intensity of a sun going, a yellow sun going to a super red sun, and then it falling in on itself and turning into a condensed blue star, or sometimes even if it's more condensed and pressurized into a black hole, creates an enormous amount of power, of dark energy and dark matter that can either just fall in on itself or then be blown apart, as in a supernova going into supernova. And these are processes and structures and functions of what the whole of everything in the cosmos, on any level you want to look at it, operates on these laws. And let's look at some more of them. Now, we know in psychology today, now in the 1900s, and then now in the 21st century, we say there's a lot of different kinds of pressure. There's psychological pressure, there's mental pressure, there's career pressure, there's financial pressure, there's need to make money pressure. There's emotional pressure in relationships. There's people pressuring each other to cross boundaries in relationships and in families, that people pressure one another. And this is called abuse. This is called shame. This is called intimidation. It happens between people, in families, within culture, within a neighborhood, between nations, and between political groups. This kind of pressure seems absolutely central and necessarily essential to the whole notion of being. So we're talking about an ontology and epistemology, or in terms of philosophy. And so, if we carry this forward, we can see that pressure happens in so many ways. There is pressure called bullying, which happens among peers in school. And there's all kinds of other social pressures, the pressure to conform, that you have to dress the same way as everyone else and speak the same way and use the same turns of phrases and the language and listen to the same music. And this is tantamount. If you give into this social pressure, then you lose yourself. You have absolutely no unique identity. This has led us in the 21st century to one of the reasons why this society and civilization is failing and is bound to fail, because everything that doesn't take a creative process to using the pressure for something positive, like in the case of a human psyche, individuation, or in the case of somebody who's lacking money, to go out and find the money and use the pressure in a positive way to create something different. Now, of course, artists and visionaries and musicians and scientists who are true scientists know how to use this pressure to create a better vision for themselves and for the future. Such a person was William Blake, and such another one in science was Einstein. We will do a lovely video on Einstein soon. And also we have, in sociology, population pressure. As the pressure increases, 7.2 billion people now, that pressure on natural resources and housing and food and clothing and migrations of people and warfare over natural resources, that population pressure is enormous. And we have predation pressure. So we have those of us who are biologists or zoologists, and we look at, the balance between like wolves and bison or wolves and rabbits or different animal species in the same kind of region or territory. Predation pressure will also change all kinds of interrelationships within the natural and animal and plant environment. We have geological pressure, and this goes on over, of course, hundreds of millions of years. And one of the positive outcomes we can say of geological pressure is the grinding of the tectonic plates. But what this does for all the carbon of the dead plants that's inside the sedimentary layers shows that coal can eventually be, under great, great pressure, under a long, long time, can be turned into diamond. And we're using this as a symbol for what individuals can do and must do in this society today, and what society as it's in its wholeness, not just one nation, but all nations here under the social global pressure we now face with natural resources and global warming and increasing warfare and so on, all these issues, we need to have a creative solution, a diamond solution to resolve all these issues in the most magnificent and positive ways, don't we? And so boundaries is another issue of pressure, whether it's territorial boundaries between nations or boundaries, psychological, energetic boundaries between people. We need to use this pressure to hold strong to ourselves and keep our boundaries strong and not let other people overtake us or abuse us or bully us. Again, all these are important issues on the planet today. Now, again, I just want to go briefly back to the pressure that shame puts on us when people try to intimidate us. And of course, a lot of this we can do to ourselves if we internalize the pressure, which a lot of people do. And that's why there's so much mental illness on the planet. And all peoples of all traditions, and of course the World Health Organization recognizes the fact that the mental pressure is both internal and from the external to individuals and families is so immense that loneliness, depression, suicide, and just kind of giving up are some of the resultants of people that cannot come up to the point of looking after themselves. And so we could say that in another, we could say in an evolutionary sense, Darwinian sense, if you like, that the pressure for the survival of the fittest is another testing point here or boot camp for every individual at this time on the planet or any time. It's like, what are you going to do with the pressure that you're feeling? Whether it's mental, emotional, relational, financial, career, health, whatever these pressures might be, what are you going to do about it? It's meant to be there. You cannot escape it. It is always going to be there. You can be, humans are very adaptive and fluid and flexible, and they can kind of flow with it. And that's another kind of pressure. In physics, we have fluid flow, fluid pressure. Cars have fluid pressures and so on. So as humans, what we need to do is take this pressure, understand it, take it to the next higher level, take it to a level of super consciousness where we understand, you know what, this is just a fact of life. It's from the cosmos all the way down to the atom, there's pressure. And so we can do something positive when we see it in the right light, which is the point of these videos. When you understand the need to do something creative and transformational and transmutational with all the pressures you're feeling, then you're on the right track and you're doing the right thing by understanding it first and then taking action. And so these are the basic aspects we wanted to cover in this first one here. Now, whereas there is a fluid kind of flow pressure we have, like there's a flow rate for blood or oil or gas in the veins of the earth and so on, there's also a stagnation pressure. And I think many of us as humans understand what stagnation pressure is like. It's when things slow down, stop, and then the pressure builds up, doesn't it, when you stop thinking and you stop feeling and you stop acting. Pressure builds up, and it's like a pressure cooker, and it will blow, as we know, when young people just go and shoot all their fellow students and their teachers in schools in America, or when somebody pulls the button on a nuclear bomb or a suicide bomb or something like this. The pressure just becomes so intense that this is one unfortunate negative result of not dealing with pressure in a creative, transformational, spiritual, psychological manner, both as individuals and as groups of people and as a global society now. We need to understand how pressure works, what it is, what it can be, how we can take charge of it, and how we can move with it as we choose to superconsciously and consciously transform it. And it's true in psychological terms, in terms of Jungian psychology in particular, or Freudian psychology, that there's pressure in the unconscious. And when you do not deal with your dreams and you do not deal with all the building up of emotion that's hidden and secretive and blocked in the unconscious, which then goes into your body, not only will it create a lot of autoimmune illnesses and perhaps cancerous conditions, as I know from my 35, 40 years of working with clients as a clinician, but I also know that this, in a mental and emotional and spiritual way, this undealt with building up of unconscious pressure is going to have disastrous results, and it will come back upon you, hit you in the back or hit you in the heart as fate or accident or karma if you do not face it and deal with it. Just get over the fear, go into it, and dive into where the pain and the pressure and the oppression seems deepest. And that, of course, as we know from Jungian psychology, is where the healing will be the greatest. You go where the pressure is the greatest, the pain, the suffering, the torture, the oppression, and this is the key to healing and becoming a divine human being. This is, of course, what Jesus did. It's what Buddha did. It's what Mandela did. It's what Bob Marley did. It's what Martin Luther King did and Gandhi did. They used their internal psychological pressures and the social and political, economic, and racial pressures to overcome what was being felt by them, and they took the higher road and they consciously understood what they were doing, and they brought about massive moral and ethical change through the pressures that they and all the people were feeling. This is historical antecedents of individuals. It always happens on an individual level before it can happen within a group. But these are mentors that we can look up to, and we ourselves can be just like them. And so this is a call to higher consciousness to deal with your pressures in a most creative, spiritual, and also powerful, magnetic way. I'd also like to say that in this series there's going to be a lot on just on pressure as a universal law of creation. And you can see the etymology of a lot of the words we use in English, and I will break it all down as an overview now in closing, and then I will deal with these all in future videos. So pression, the French word, pressure, English. Here are some of the English words that come out of the word pressure. Suppression, oppression, repression, depression, aggression, regression, and also progression, impression, and expression. All these come from the one clear, powerful law of the need to have pressure in the universe, both at the Big Bang at the beginning and all the way through as galaxies and stars were being made. It's always about pressure and expansion, pressure, transformation, and a new creative expression. This is how evolution of galaxies and stars and planets work. This is how evolution of the spiritual consciousness works. This is how evolution of the psyche works, the biology works, the biochemistry works, the sociology works, and how groups evolve. And species evolve. It's all through pressure, understanding, as human beings at least, because we have the higher capacity. But even so, if it was just an amoeba or a prokaryote or a eukaryote cell, pressure is what happens, and then some creative force of transmutation, transformation, and evolution happens within that organism or system, and then something brand new expands and opens up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. I look forward to seeing you again, and we will carry on with further laws of creation, but we'll also explore pressure or pression and all the kinds of pression that exist so we can understand ourselves and all move forward individually, collectively, to a new civilization that is now emerging. Om Namah Shivaya.